Hello and welcome back to Knit by Naya. This is podcast episode number 5. And we have a nice theme going, a nice cozy vibe. I thought it'd be fun to do like a sort of sleepover type of setup. So you're seeing my bed in the background and there's some nice ambiance. So hopefully it sets the mood and you're ready to dive into some of my recent cast-ons, my ongoing projects, and some acquisitions. I have to mention that I brought a little sleeping mask. Well, I sleep with this every night. Is it a little bit cringe? Yeah, I don't know, but it's cute. I have a little teacup here. Spoiler alert, it's actually juice. So I just had to come clean. I can't lie to you. I originally had another idea for a different theme, but I couldn't execute it the way that I wanted to, so I went with this instead. And I thought it'd be fun to just switch it up a little bit, do something a little bit different while maintaining the same structure as my other podcasts. Anywho, that's enough playing around. I'm gonna take this off now. Okay, let's just dive right in. I have a significant amount of things to share, considering that the last podcast episode was over a month ago at this point. First, let's start with some finished objects. I have really been into summer knitting this year. Last summer, I think I only knit 2 things, or completed 2 things, and those were both the camisole number 9 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And this summer I wanted to sort of expand on that, and I was also just really inspired by all of the patterns I was seeing and also all of the yarns that I was using. So I've got 3 finished objects to show you, all of which you may have seen here on my channel before in some previous project vlogs / the finishing my whips video. So the first thing is the rose top, which is this keyhole cutout t-shirt that is by Mathilde Knits. I've talked about it a lot and shared a lot about the knitting process. So in case you want to see what the process was like, definitely check out those videos. But for this one, I knit this very off gauge, and that was because I wanted to use the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk held single, and that just meant that I would get a much lighter drapey fabric. So I did that and was pretty confident going in because I'm used to modifying patterns. I kind of just use the calculations that are given and then do some math, around those numbers. And for this one, I basically just recalculated some minor things at each step and followed her instructions for the basic shape and construction of it. So it is a raglan. You can see here the raglan line, and that made the first step pretty easy because you just sort of cast on, you knit the little folded edge. Of course it's unfolded as you're knitting and you kind of finish that last, but you work a bunch of increases, and I basically just worked the amount that would make sense for my stitch gauge and also row gauge to make sure that the depth was, the correct proportion to my body. I believe I did slightly more increases just to make sure that it fit, and I also tried it on as I went along. And then after that point, you put the stitches on hold at the underarm. I think I casted on stitches because at that point the pattern just says to start knitting in the round, but the circumference didn't fit my body. And I think other people have mentioned this when they knit this pattern, that they did have to cast on stitches for the underarm. So I just went ahead and I think I casted on 20 stitches, which made sense for my gauge. If I didn't mention it already, I did use 3mm needles for this, so it took some time and was definitely a labor of love. Once I did that, I just continued knitting the body, following the incremental decreases that happen on either side of the body. And the only thing I changed was that I did 8 or 9 decrease repeats. So I just did slightly more, and I didn't increase towards the hip. I just kind of left it as is. And I knit it to the length that I desired, and it turned out perfectly. It goes past my belly button, and it's really comfortable for me to wear. Considering the big cutout in the center, I wanted to make sure that it covers my stomach, and that's it. You go back in to do some finishings with a crochet hook, which I did for the keyhole. I left the armholes plain, but I did do the crochet finishing at the hem of the body. Last but not least, the buttons I used were 2 random buttons that I have from my collection. I have a bunch of miscellaneous buttons, but I did find these 2 matching ones, and I did a poll on my Instagram to have people help me decide on which buttons to choose. And out of all of the options, these were the most similar to the color of this fabric, and I feel like it looks really good, so I'm happy with the final result. So the next piece I have to show you is a tank top, and it is the Thelma dress pattern that I used for it, except I modified it to make it into a tank. This was a project that I wanted to start because I had seen it from an Instagram knitter who had knit the dress and then really loved it and cast on a second version. And instead of knitting the full length of the dress, she stopped at the hip or the waist and did like a cropped version. So I got inspired and initially casted this on using a different yarn, but I didn't enjoy the tension and all of that and the texture of that yarn specifically for this pattern. So I found this cotton in my stash, which is the Premier Yarns Afternoon Cotton, which is a 100% mercerized Egyptian cotton. And it's a yarn that I've used before, that I've really enjoyed for gift knits because it's machine washable. And I thought that when I swatched, or actually I didn't swatch, I think I just casted this on to see the texture in this yarn, and I loved it. And I just decided that I would keep going. It features full cables and ribbing, and the front and back are knit identically. You cast on and begin following several charts that have this ribbing, this, 2x2 rib with the faux cable that uses like yarn overs and some increases and decreases. And you basically knit until a certain length. For each panel, you seam them together or pick up stitches, which is what I did. So I knit the back first, picked up stitches, and then knit the front. And then you join in the round and you just continue working the body. Now, I'm not sure if there's any shaping involved in the actual skirt portion of the original dress pattern, but I noticed that there wasn't any shaping involved in the front and back panel and for the rest of the body. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to find a way to make this the most well-fitting garment that I could make it, especially considering that it does use machine washable yarn and has a little bit more stretch in the fabric, if that makes sense. With this, I experimented with some bust shaping, and I did a whole video on that and how I implemented that into some other garments. And I basically applied the same technique, did some calculations, and then added about 2 inches worth of fabric in the front panel. I did that using short rows, and I basically placed my turns in hidden places on the garment. So to avoid interrupting the textured pattern, I would place my turns close to the underarm areas, and I placed them within the purl columns. A couple of them were placed, like maybe one of the turns was placed in a knit column, but I was able to hide that because once I finished that bust shaping, I did waist decreases on the sides to just cinch the body of it in. With some time and patience and, you know, calculations and all of that, I achieved a really nicely shaped garment. I don't know if you can see that, but those two knit columns sort of get decreased into that center cable that's underneath each underarm. I feel like it turned out pretty good considering I did it with my own brain. Like, that's so fun. And it was more straightforward than I thought because I knew the steps I needed to take to achieve the fit that I wanted. It was just about doing the math to get there. Once you move some numbers around and subtract here, add a little there, you know, there's room for some error, but it turned out very nicely and I really enjoyed the fit of this. I haven't washed it yet, so we'll see how that goes. I think I'll still hand wash it. What I'm considering is whether I'll put it in the dryer or let it air dry. I just want to see how it reacts in water because I did do a steam block for this instead of a full wet block. So I'm kind of scared that it's gonna stretch like immensely, similar to the way that superwash merino does. But I mean, I have used this yarn before and it does stretch a decent amount, but I guess my main concern is that it'll stretch horizontally and kind of mess with all of the work that I've done to have it, you know, shape my body nicely. So I'll probably soak this when it's time for the end of the season, and we'll see if I dry it in the dryer. I think that'll help it cinch back in, but also I don't want to ruin the texture or anything. I don't know, we'll see. I think it'll be fine. Okay, next up we have another tank top, and this one is the Lemontini top by bluueforyouu. This is another one that I saw on Instagram initially, and then I looked it up on Ravelry, and it's basically a tank that mostly is just the front panel. And it has a super low scooped back with these really cool I-cord ties, and you can sort of tie them however you want in the back. So mine has like this crisscrossed look. Let me untangle it. There you go. So for this one, I also knit it on a small gauge. Also one thing, for that Thelma top, I did use 3.5mm needles, if I'm correct. For this Lemontini, I used 3mm needles. It was another one that I knit very, very off gauge, but I'm sort of used to modifying things like that and just sizing up based on the sizes given, doing some calculations on the gauge provided by the designer, you know, using my gauge and then seeing how many inches I need to accommodate for or account for. I believe I knit the size large to sort of compensate for the difference in gauge, as I did with my rose top, which was also knit in a size large. And I basically worked as the pattern said until I got to the point where she suggested that you could add bust shaping, and so I did add some, I think about an inch, which is a small amount, but this yarn is pretty stretchy. So I did that, and then after the shaping, you just continue knitting down while making increases along the edge of the panel, which sort of shapes that U-shaped scoop for the back. Once I did that, I casted on a bunch of stitches for the back panel, which is this little piece, and then you continue working in the round for the rest of the body, which is a very small amount, probably like 2 inches or maybe 1.5 inches, and then like a 1/2 inch of ribbing. I just did a very lazy bind off because I wasn't in the mood to do the Icelandic bind off that's suggested, but you definitely can if you want to. And I still feel like it looks pretty neat just because of how small the needles are. If I was using like a 4 or whatever needle that's called for in the pattern, it might not be as easy to get away with that. Yeah, once you do that, you start knitting your I-cords, which takes some patience. I believe each one is knit to around 40 inches. I knit mine to like 32 or something before I got sick of it. So I did that for each one, and once you do that, you sort of do like an applied I-cord technique where you continue I-cord, and then the last stitch of each round or row is sort of knit together with the first stitch of your knit fabric. You make these little hole thingies where you can string your I-cord ties through, and you just do that applied edge all the way around the back cutout. So it creates this really neat and clean look. It has a very nice finished look, which I really appreciate considering how simple the garment is, but it's like simple and well executed. For the yarn, I used a yarn that I had in stash, which was the Koigu KPPPM. It's basically their line of hand-dyed merino yarn. I believe they have this version, which is the fingering version, and they might also have a DK version. I really love this color. It's the color 311, and it features these sage greens and like this beige color, gray, and then also some pink. And I paired that with another yarn I had in stash, which was scrap yarn from my Augustine's number 7, I believe, which is sitting over there, which is why I'm smiling, because I feel like I should know the number. But that's like my magnum opus sweater. I love it. I love it so much. And I was surprised that I had some leftover yarn, but it, was perfect that I was able to use it with this merino. And I feel like the pinks look cute together. So I'm happy that this color combo, jumped out at me when it did. And that's what inspired me to cast on immediately after finishing the rose top. So I think I was working on this at the same time as the Thelma. Because it works up so quickly, you're only doing one panel really, I was able to sort of fly through it, besides the I-cords, of course. And yeah, I finished this one around the same time as the Thelma top. So that was really nice and very satisfying. So that's it for finished objects. And now I have several whips / acquisitions that I want to show you. And the first one is actually another summer top. I think I've got 3 more, and then that'll like conclude the summer knitting. So this is a self-drafted tank top, which I have featured in a couple of my past videos, including the finishing my whips video. It makes like a quick appearance. For this piece, I am also using the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the color Coal, and it's a yarn that I had for about a year. I purchased it last year to make the Ringo top by May Bruns, but I frogged it. And I know it's really sad because I thought that I was going to continue working on it since it was sort of hibernating for the fall and winter. But I don't know. When I was looking at it, I just thought about how much pain it was causing me as I was knitting it, and it didn't seem worth it to have to do that all over texture at a gauge that was, I don't know what it was, that was just really uncomfortable for my hands, especially considering the Thelma. I guess it's a slightly larger gauge. I used 3.5s for this. Who knew, like, half a millimeter of thickness in a needle could really make such a big difference, but it does. So I frogged it and I casted this on instead, and I had the idea to knit a top inspired by this Pinterest photo, which is this halter neck ruffle top. So this has similar elements. It's going to be a tank, but I'm not sure if I want to do the halter neck or just straight ties. And it's also going to be a ruffle top. So I've done these purl rounds that will be the perfect place for me to pick up stitches so that I can knit some ruffles. Now, I'm not exactly sure how I will approach that because I've never knit ruffles before, but I'm assuming you pick up stitches, but then you definitely need to cast on more so that there's more fabric and it'll sort of scrunch up. I'll have to do some research to figure out the best approach. But until then, I'm working on the main body of the garment that's going to be situated underneath those ruffles. So all I have to worry about right now is just knitting in the round some nice plain stockinette. And I think I'm doing about 29 rows of plain stockinette, then 1 purl round. And I'm doing that 3 times. The way that I came to that number is just based on my gauge. I wanted each panel of stockinette to be a certain length, and then the ruffles will be that length plus some, so that they sort of stop at the halfway point of each stockinette panel, and that way the ruffles are like overlapping. Yeah, it was fun to experiment with the shaping for the top of it. So it's got this nice like scooped neck. It also has an open back, which I'm proud of the way that looks. It's kind of curling up right now, but once it has the straps, it'll come together. And then at the under bust line, I did some double knitting. It was just to make it look cool, I guess. It doesn't really have a true function, but I thought it would be a nice feature for the top of it to like be visually distinct from the ruffles that'll follow. And that was also based on that image that I saw. So yeah, it looks pretty simple and plain right now, but once I finish the length of the body, the real fun will be knitting the actual ruffles. Some info about the needles. I'm using a US 1.5, which I think is a 2.5mm needle, and I had to purchase this like cheap pair of needles on Amazon just because the other 2.5s are shorties. My main 2.5 needle was a Koigu needle, and with those they come on this extra thin cord, and I've purchased it twice and it has snapped on me both times, which is really, really sad. Because of that, I have just not, gone back to them. Love me a Koigu needle. I love them. They're probably my favorite to work with, and I have like a select few. Most of them are shorties though, so the cord is just a different size, and I feel like they work better with that standard thickness of a cord. Anyways, my point is, those are the only needles I have, and I needed one that had a cord that's big enough to fit around my body. So I just purchased this random set, and it's been doing a good job, so I'm happy with that. I think that's it for this top. The next thing that I've been working on is actually a test knit, which I'm not going to show much of just because, like I said in my last video, I'm making a whole project vlog sort of thing that'll be coming hopefully by the end of this month. We'll see, but it is using that pink yarn that has been frogged, and it's been a thing. So I'm happy that it's finally, it's getting the love that it deserves in such a beautiful knit. I'm gonna be knitting the Stingray top by Vera Grazia, and it's working up beautifully, and I wish I could show you, but I gotta have some anticipation building, but for now, here's a swatch. It looks beautiful. This is knit on 3.25mm needles, which I've never worked with before. It's not a needle that I had in my collection, in my pack of interchangeables, so I did have to purchase them separately. But apparently Knitters Pro or Knit Pro and Knitters Pride are the same brands, but one is UK and one's US. Tell me why I never knew that. So I bought a pair of Knit Pro to go with my Knitters Pride interchangeables, and it fits perfectly on all of my cords, so that's cool. I was a little bit worried about the tension. I thought that holding, again, the pure silk double with a 3.25 would have been too tight of a gauge, but it's actually very nice and has some drape to it, but is also, you know, it's opaque enough. It lends itself well to the tank that I'm knitting it with. Maybe I'll show you a sneak peek of just the lace. Look at the lace, look at the lace, wow. So yeah, it's beautiful, I love her, and I'm excited to share in that video, so stay tuned. Next, we have a whip/yarn acquisition, which will be our first of the episode. And that is for this yarn, which is the Drops Saffron in the shade Sunshine. Where's the yarn? It's over here. Let's see. So in this yarn, or for this yarn, what am I saying? I originally purchased 6 balls of this yarn, and I did so for the test knit, but it was going to arrive like a week after I needed it to, and I eventually went out of town. So I just cast it on with a pink yarn, and I'm happy that I did because I think that's just meant to be. So I had this here when I got back, and I decided to cast on another top. It's the Tessa tube top by Heidi, or Pickles Knits. This is a pattern from years ago. I can't find the date. Oh, okay, not that long ago. It was first published in September of 2024. It's basically this all over ribbed tube top. And I thought that this yarn would be perfect for it because it's such a bright color, and I really wanted something that would just be like a plain fabric. And I think the ribbing does that, but it's still got some texture to it and some interest to it, so that the knitting experience is still really engaging, but it lets the yarn shine. So yeah, this is what it looks like. I'm really excited about it. It's knit from the bottom up on 3.5mm needles, but I'm using 3s just because that's what this yarn calls for. And in hindsight, I think I could have knit with a 3.5 because the knitting experience is a little bit tight, but I feel like it's fine because I do want it to be a substantial enough fabric that I can wear it without a bra. I believe it is going to have like a double folded top bandeau part, so I won't have to worry about any see-throughness. Yeah, seems like a fun pattern. So it comes in 8 sizes, and I'm knitting the extra large. I am slightly off gauge again, and that's just because, again, it's a small gauge, and also I think my tension is a little bit tight on these needles. After measuring, I decided that the extra large would be the best fit for me, and I did try this on, and it's hard to tell. Oh, is it gonna thunderstorm right now? That's so sad. Anyways, I did try this on, and it's hard to tell what the fit's gonna be like with something that's knit bottom up, but I think it's going well so far, and I'm just putting a lot of faith into it at this point. But it's fine because it looks beautiful and it's very nice to look at. So yeah, we'll see. I believe you knit plain up until the underbust area, and then you begin making increases outwards to sort of shape the bust area. I'm not sure exactly how it's worked because I haven't read to that point yet in the pattern, but there are short rows, and again there is that double folded bandeau part. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sort of just trusting the process, honestly, and just having fun. I've got a lot of whips going on, so I kind of cast it on and like knit a bunch during the first 2 days, and I've just been having that on the back burner. But I'm really excited to try out this yarn for the first time. We'll see how it works up. If I didn't mention already, it's 100% cotton, and yeah, it's nice. It's a nice texture, it's very soft, so I think it'll be perfect for this pattern. And last but not least, we have a gift knit that is actually very, 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 very late. It's actually from a year ago, and it was originally gifted for Christmas. I knit hats for my dad, my brother, and my uncle, and two of them were fine upon initially gifting them, but because this is a superwash yarn, which I'll talk about in a second, they did grow significantly. I try to use superwash for gift knits just because it's easy for certain garments, especially wearables. Some people are able to read the care instructions and really be gentle with their clothing, and others might just be in a hurry, and some things may end up in the dirty clothes pile, and then you take it to the washer and dryer, and sometimes it just ends up there, and you don't want to knit something with like 100% wool and then all of a sudden it shrinks. So I try to choose superwash for my gift knits. It's easier to have the option to machine wash them. And this is the knit. It's going to be a hat, an all over ribbed hat. The one that I knit previously was just a little bit too large to begin with, and then over time it stretched, and that was without washing actually. And the other hat that I knit for my brother also, I think, stretched over time, and that was even before he washed it. So they returned them to me and made requests for them to be adjusted sizing wise. So I'm re-knitting them, and I have much more knowledge and awareness of these sort of things, so I think it'll turn out much better. I'm sort of following the guide of the weekend hat by PetiteKnit. For the hats that I knit in the past, I've done all of them free-handed, and I've done the calculations myself and figured out the points of the decreases. I've done hats with 4 points of decreases or 6 points of decreases or 3, and all of them have turned out pretty good. So I'm confident in my ability to self-draft a hat pattern. But for this, I was just like, it's like the 4th time I've redone these, and it's just, it hasn't turned out the way that I wanted it to. So I thought it'll just be easier for me to purchase a pattern and kind of lay back and just knit, and not have to worry about all the calculations. Now, with this, I have realized that I still need to knit it off gauge, of course, because the yarn that I'm using is the Malabrigo Mecca, which is it's either a bulky weight yarn or an Aran weight yarn. And sorry, I'm out of breath. I need to knit it with 5mm needles. I believe these are 5, if not 5.5. I'm not sure because they don't have them written on the needle, which is really inconvenient and annoying, but what can you do? I need to get one of those yarn measuring thingies where you just kind of insert the tip of the needle and measure. But anyways, that's besides the point. My point is I'm knitting these off gauge, so even though I'm using a pattern, I'm still having to do calculations. And you know what? I just have to accept that that's gonna be how it is, It's just what I gotta do. And I'm fine with that. At least I have something to reference, and I'm not going like completely based on my own numbers. So yeah, I'm starting from scratch. I unraveled, have, the scrap yarn here that I'm knitting with. And the other issue that I was running into with these is that I don't think I was able to achieve the fit that was necessary, because I had only purchased one skein of each color for each hat. So for my dad's hat, I was using this green shade, which is the shade Va. It's like VAA. And for my brother's hat, I was using this shade, which is this blue, this deep blue color. And I believe it's the shade Prussia Blue, shade 46. I don't remember the shade number for this one, but I can insert it. And here's a close-up of that one. It's like this deep green blue shade. So with that, I decided, like, if I'm gonna start over, I'm gonna do this right. I'm gonna purchase another skein of each color, and I did that, and now I have plenty of yarn to use to make these hats perfect. So I'm taking my time and really doing my due diligence, measuring at every step. I'm like measuring every few rounds. I'm taking it off the needles, I'm trying it out myself, I'm stretching it to see, like, okay, if it was on this size head, like, how is it fitting so far? And I think it's gonna pay off. I'm hoping that they will withstand the test of time, because I also have to account for stretch over time, and then also if they decide to wash them, they need to be able to, like, spring back after they put them in the dryer. So yeah, that was a lot, but that's my current whip, and these are the yarn acquisitions that I made. And with that, we have finished talking about all of my whips and current knits and all of that. And that concludes the knitting segment of this episode, and I actually have a couple things that are non-knitting related that I still want to share, because they have been things that I've been working on aside from all of these knits. Hopefully the framing didn't change too much. I had to go charge my camera. Also, I'm really praying right now that my mic was on for the entirety of the hour and change that I just filmed. So let's just cross our fingers together for that one. Anywho, I mentioned that I wanted to share some non-knitting related things. So the first thing that I wanted to show you is some crochet. I sometimes need to take a break from knitting, and I like to do so by engaging in other crafts. And one of those things is crocheting, of course. Gotta go back to my roots. I wanted to knit some granny squares just because. So I grabbed some scrap yarn and chose some random colors. I chose these like yellows. These two are both cotton yarn. This might be cotton as well, and then this one is the merino that I mentioned before. The light's kind of getting dark. Hopefully that looks a little better. I do want to keep the nighttime vibe, but like, I want you to be able to see. There you go. So yeah, I just knit these for fun. And do they have a purpose right now? No, not necessarily, but I'm thinking of turning them into little coasters. So maybe I'll pick up stitches along each border and just expand them and make them into little diamond-shaped coasters. I love the flower motif in the center. I really enjoy doing puff stitches, so that's kind of why I chose this specific pattern. Anywho, I just wanted to share because it's fun to switch things up, do something different, and I feel like that's how I avoid creative burnout, by just finding inspiration in other crafts, in other ways. The second thing I wanted to show you is painting related stuff. I really enjoy painting. I'm not very good at it. Well, you know what, let me hype myself up. I feel like I'm able to replicate other art pieces that I see, but I'm not the greatest at just painting from nothing. When I do paint from nothing, I'm usually doing something a little bit more abstract, and that's what I have to show today. I made them the other day just for fun. I don't know. I was like, I can't hold the needle. Crocheting for too long hurts my right hand or my left hand because I'm like gripping the fabric like this for some reason. So, you know, I'll do it a little bit here and there, but nothing crazy. And since I wanted to take a break from knitting, I was like, let me just paint. So I have these old little filler pieces that come when you buy picture frames, and I had them laying around, and they're just these brown like scraps of cardboard basically. I had these laying around and wanted to repurpose them because I didn't have any actual canvases in my collection. Two of them I did paint over to actual canvases. I painted them over in all white and sort of prepped them for use at a later time. But in the meantime, I wanted to repurpose these. So I painted them with white first, and then I just made these little, I don't know, like abstract pieces. They're just using the same like color palette of pinks and greens, which kind of go with the theme of all of my decorative things in my apartment. So I wanted to pull from that and just painted over these little cardboard pieces. This one is like the little frame thingy that comes in the package, and they're pretty thick, so that's why I thought that they would be good for this purpose. I just used acrylic paint and some water. I'm happy with how they turned out. Of course the water, you know, makes them sort of curve a little bit, but if I just rest something heavy on them over time, I think they'll just flatten a bit, and that way I can sort of prep them to be placed in actual frames. But yeah, aren't they beautiful? I am in love. I just love the colors. This one's my favorite, and in the corner it still has the thing that says like recycled materials on it, but it kind of, I don't know, it doesn't matter to me because it kind of looks like it fits. I would sign them, but I don't really like to sign them on the front. I'll usually do it on the back somewhere, as to not like interrupt what's going on. But yeah, they bring me so much joy, and I'm excited to hang them up and find a good place for them on my walls somewhere. Yeah, that concludes everything that I wanted to share today. Hopefully you enjoyed watching. If you found something in this video that inspired you, please let me know. I'd love to hear about some of the crafty things that you're working on. They don't have to be knitting related. Give this video a like, subscribe to support the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.